Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Manchetti.
Our headlines today. As Joe Biden tightens his grip on the White House, Donald Trump makes more unsubstantiated claims of voting fraud.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election.
Joe Biden appeals for calm and says democracy sometimes requires a little patience.
We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners. So I ask everyone to stay calm, all the people to stay calm.
With the help of 2,000 military personnel, Liverpool becomes the first city in England to trial mass COVID testing.
Good morning. Pay-per-view in the Premier League is likely to be scrapped. The clubs decide to look at alternatives later this month after many fans boycotted the extra $14.95 charge to watch some of the games.
And once again, for some of you, it's a pretty foggy start out there. Frosty too across the south, but most places will brighten up to sunny spells through today. I'll have details on that and your weekend forecast here on Breakfast.
Good morning, it's Friday the 6th of November. Our top story today, President Donald Trump has insisted he has won the US presidential election, even though votes are still being counted.
In his first public address since the early hours of Wednesday morning, Mr. Trump complained about voter fraud without providing any evidence.
It's now down to a handful of key states, but current figures show Joe Biden is edging closer to the White House with 253 electoral votes compared to Trump's 214. They need 270 to claim victory.
Let's get more from our North America correspondent, Ben Wright.
He didn't sound like a president confident of victory. Instead, Donald Trump appeared in the White House to denigrate America's electoral process and make a slew of unfounded claims about voting and fraud.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land.
With his chances of re-election appearing to recede by the hour, the president made a wholly false distinction between votes cast in person on the day and votes cast by mail. Both are legal and both are still being counted. Some in the president's own party spoke out. On Twitter, the Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, said there was no defense for the president's comments, undermining the democratic process. There is no evidence of postal voting fraud. And in Georgia, a state Donald Trump must win to have a chance of taking the White House, his early lead has been shrinking fast as mail-in ballots are processed. In Pennsylvania, a state with 20 electoral college votes, Donald Trump's election night lead has been eroded too. The Trump campaign has filed a lawsuit to press for closer scrutiny of the ballot counting process, but the state's top election official has strongly defended the count.
The strength of the integrity of this vote is really unparalleled. Same when you vote in person, right? You have to be registered, you go in, you sign in the poll book. All these things are tracked.
Good afternoon, folks.
Joe Biden's tone and tactics could not be more different to the president he's now confident of replacing.
We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners. So I ask everyone to stay calm, all the people to stay calm.
While there are still votes to count, a Joe Biden presidency is not a certainty, and his slim lead over Donald Trump in Arizona narrowed during Thursday.
And we will make...
Donald Trump does not want to be a one-term president, and he's willing to rubbish America's democratic reputation to try and hold on. But it's the states in charge of counting the votes, and that process continues no matter what Mr. Trump says. Joe Biden has said he will try and unite this divided country if he wins the election. If Donald Trump is on his way out of the White House, he hasn't made that task any easier. Ben Wright, BBC News, Washington.
Ben's been busy in Washington. We can talk to him now. Ben, good to see you. Look, so we've got these pictures of Pennsylvania, which is one of these states, isn't it, where it's so close at the moment and counts are still going on. Just take us through just what happens next, I suppose.
Morning, Naga. Well, the counting continues, and as you said, all eyes right now are on Pennsylvania and Georgia, because to win this election, one of the candidates needs to reach that magic number of 270 electoral college votes. The way it stacks up right now, if Donald Trump is going to be re-elected, he has to win Georgia and Pennsylvania. He has no other route to the White House because they have such a lot of electoral college votes between them. Now, in Pennsylvania, on election night itself, Donald Trump was leading by 500,000 votes. But as all those postal ballots have been counted, many from Democratic voters, of course, that has shrunk dramatically. And the last time I checked, he is leading by just 22,000 votes. Now, 99% of the total ballots have been counted in Pennsylvania, but it's a massive state, and that means there are still thousands of ballots to count, and that's happening right now. In Georgia, it's a similar story. Donald Trump is still ahead of Joe Biden, but his lead now is just 1,709. And again, that's 99% of the ballots counted. So not much more counting to go, but the momentum is clearly going one way. And we knew this would happen because in these states, they would count the postal ballots last after they'd done all the in-person on-the-day counting. And so it was always going to happen that there was going to be a surge for Joe Biden towards the back half of this process, and that's what we're seeing. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible for Donald Trump to win this election. He could still do it if he gets everything that's still being counted. But it's Joe Biden, I think, who's now closing in on the presidency.
OK, well, you'll keep an eye on it, we'll keep an eye on it, and everyone's keeping an eye on it. Ben, thanks very much. Ben, right there.
People in Liverpool City will be offered repeat coronavirus tests from today as the UK's first mass testing pilot launches in the city.
The Army arrived yesterday to help deliver the programme, which could be rolled out to millions of people by Christmas.
Our reporter Dan Johnson is at one of the testing centres this morning for us. Dan, we can't actually make out much of where you are because, of course, it's still dark. I see you've got your mask on. Just take us through how this scheme will work.
Yeah, so there'll be two types of tests offered at centres like this across Liverpool. One is the same sorts of tests that people have been getting for months now on a sort of drive-through basis. That should give a result on the same day after an analysis in a lab. But also these new lateral flow tests, which are the really quick handheld results. They should be able to give a response within 20 minutes, half an hour. And it's hoped that that will enable people in the city to get a much better idea of exactly how much of the virus is circulating, who may have it, even if they haven't got symptoms. This is being offered to everyone across Liverpool City itself, whatever their age, although it will be focused at key workers, people who need to keep working in the first instance. It's not mandatory, it's completely voluntary. It's for up to people to ring up, book a test, or to turn up to one of these centres across the city. But the hope is that this will test out this system, as you say, being supported by huge numbers of Army personnel who've been brought into the area to set up these centres and run the logistics. But the hope very much is that they can prove that this works, sort out what is needed to make it efficient, and then hopefully this can be rolled out not just across this area but for other cities to try and help us beat the virus and control the numbers.
Dan, for the moment, thank you very much. We'll be speaking to Professor Matt Ashton in about 20 minutes' time, who is the Director of Public Health for Liverpool, and spending some time as those centres open. Midday, I think they're due to open.
Boris Johnson has insisted that the 4-week lockdown in England will be enough to reduce the rate of coronavirus infections.
The furlough scheme, which subsidises the wages of workers who would otherwise be laid off, has been extended until March.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Nick Eardley, who's in Westminster. Nick, good morning to you. OK, so I think it's fair enough to say that many people are really weary and tired of these restrictions, with these restrictions going on. So they needed to know that there would be an end date, and that was confirmed by Boris Johnson, wasn't it?
I think that's right, Naga, and when a lot of people saw yesterday that this massive, expensive support scheme for jobs was being extended by another 4 months until the end of March, there was a bit of nervousness, really, wasn't there? Does that mean that lockdown is potentially going to last that long? Boris Johnson, that press conference last night, I thought, was really at pains to tell us repeatedly that the measures that have just come into force in England will expire on the 2nd of December. He really wants that to happen. The question is what happens after that. And the government's plan is to go back to the tier system that we saw just before lockdown. That could mean some pretty big restrictions coming back, though. Remember, if you're in one of the tier 3 areas, like large parts of the north of England, where that means a lot of hospitality and things like that are closed. And I think that's one of the reasons the government decided to extend this furlough scheme for so long, because if that tier system does come back, it's really worried about the potential health picture, it's really worried about the potential economic picture over the next few months as well. So it wanted to offer that support. It is worth just pointing out, though, the government didn't want to be in this place when it came to furlough. They were trying to wind the system down to basically replace it with a less generous scheme. They've been forced to do this by the way that the picture looks just now. And opposition parties are saying, well, look, we were calling for this months ago. And if you'd done that, maybe the economic picture might be a bit more stable.
OK, Nick, thanks very much. Nick Erdley there for us.
Students at the University of Manchester have torn down security fencing that was put up around parts of the campus accommodation on day one of England's lockdown.
The university has since apologised and says all the barriers, which were put up without any warning to residents, will be removed this morning. Andy Moore reports.
The moment when students tore down what they called a wall. The erection of the barriers had generated enormous anger, with crowds of students marching through the Fallowfield campus. The university said the fences were meant as a security measure to help avoid what it called the mixing of households. But construction started before residents were informed. Students saw them as yet another infringement of their liberty.
We have no access to communal spaces, and now they're locking us up. They're locking us off from our green spaces. They're locking us off to see people in other halls. It is not our fault. It is not our fault.
Manchester University's Vice-Chancellor has now apologised for the concern and distress caused by the fence. Professor Dame Nancy Rothwell said it was never their intention to stop students entering or leaving the site. Dismantling of the barrier will start this morning. The university says it will be replaced by extra security patrols. Andy Moore, BBC News.
The British government says Denmark is to be removed from its travel corridor list immediately. It means people arriving back from the country will be required to self-isolate for 14 days. Denmark has announced its own strict lockdown rules after health authorities reported widespread coronavirus outbreaks in mink farms. The Prime Minister said the country would cull all of its mink, as many as 17 million in all.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.